Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I hope you're doing well. Let me say a big thank you for coming on board and for joining us tonight. This is the second webinar in our webinar series as part of our National Small Business Week initiative. You see it on the screen there. My name is Rosh Khan, and as the head of the National Small Business Week, it is a pleasure to serve as your host this evening to really navigate the discussion that we're going to have tonight. Last evening, we had another great session that was hosted by Shaliza Shah, Secretary of the GCCI, and we tackled topics around finance, financial management for MSMEs. Tonight, however, the focus is all about branding. We're going to talk about visibility. We're going to talk about increasing your reach, creating awareness. We're going to talk about marketing. But before I delve into the details on this, let me give you some more insight into who our incredible panelists are and a little bit about the organization GCCI. So for those who may not know, the GCCI is the oldest private sector representative organization in Guyana. It was established in 1890. That's right, 1890. And it's committed to improving the economic climate and really the quality of life in Guyana. When you drill down even deeper and you look at the mandate and the primary thrust of the purpose and the why of the GCCI, it is to advocate policies, to stimulate trade and investment, to connect businesses, sustain economic growth, expand opportunities for the membership of the GCCI, all with the aim of contributing to a stable and sustainable economic and social environment where Guyana can prosper. And that's exactly what our National Small Business Week initiative has been about, but with a particular focus and a special lens on small businesses. But ladies and gentlemen, let's dive right into this. On to the topic at hand, marketing, branding, visibility. Tonight we have a phenomenal panel, leaders and experts who will be sharing with us their tips, their strategies, and their opportunities. And so the question is, who are they? We've got on the panel, we've got Gary Thompson, best-selling author, mentor, coach, and director of Global Capital Incorporated. We have Evie Kanai Gerchuran, serial entrepreneur, distinguished leader, co-founder and CEO of MTech. She's also behind the scenes while she's doing this as our webinar producer, and she's the current chair of the Entrepreneurship and Small Business Committee. We have Rayad Boyce, CEO of Sonic Business Services and CEO of Brandit. He's also the co-founder of Youth Basketball Guyana. And we've got on our session this evening, Dennis Chabral, a man who really needs no introduction. He's a pioneer of online journalism in Guyana. He currently holds the post of executive chairman of News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM. All right, so there you have it. There's our incredible lineup of speakers tonight. The format's pretty simple. We're going to have about 10 minutes per speaker. And then once we've finished the engagements and the knowledge sharing sessions from our panelists, we're going to follow up with some Q&A. So before I dive into the deep introduction for our first speaker, I do want to remind everyone, we are on social media. You are watching this. We are live streaming this. So please take the time to share this on your Facebook, on any of your platforms. If there's someone out there who can benefit from what we're about to share tonight, let's get some viewers on here and share as far and wide as you can. All right. So our first speaker, Gary Thompson. He's out of New York. He is the director of Global Capital Incorporated and 10X B&M LLC, specializes in providing business mentorship, coaching, access to markets, and access to capital. He facilitates funding for business growth and expansion, real estate investment, and a whole lot more. He's previously lectured on strategic marketing at the American University of Peace Studies, and he's the author of several books. I'll list them out here: 10X Branding and Marketing Blueprint, The Psychology of Money, Impact Marketing and Branding, The Manager's Toolkit, and Billionaire Codes. And so let's applaud, our virtual applause, to welcome our first speaker, Gary Thompson.
Hi, Rush. Thanks for that warm introduction. I want to begin by just giving a big shout out to GCCI for always hosting these phenomenal programs that can have tremendous impact on business development. Back to you, Roche. All right, today I'm going to be talking about branding, but just before I get into branding, um, I represent Global Capital Inc. and 10X Branding and Marketing LLC out of New York. What we provide is mentorship coaching, access to market, and access to capital. And when we talk in capital, we're talking about debt, equity, and credit. It's not only about understanding the portfolios, but it's understanding how to access, leverage, and mitigate. We represent Credit Suite, which is one of the top credit operation in New York and in North America, meaning that we are, through the partnership, we were able to provide financial support to close to 50,000 businesses. Today, I will be talking to you about branding and marketing, and the information will be taken from the book 10X Branding and Marketing Blueprint. That's one of the books that I have released not so long ago. Now, in terms of branding, there are a number of things that one needs to consider when you are building a brand. Now, there's what is known as research-based branding, and that's the one that I love talking about because with research-based branding, it means that you have the market intelligence to inform the business development process. There's also what is known as the experiential branding, and this is based on some new technology, new innovation that is taking place, the metaverse. I will not go into that today. There's also what is known as perceptional branding, and this is what we see most people tend to adopt to, which means that you have a perception, you have a hunch, and you build your story, you build your brand around that. And we believe in building a brand that will have strong authenticity, strong integrity, and to do that, it requires research. And as I go to the next slide now, you will have a clear idea as to what I'm about to talk about. Now, in building a brand, there are a number of important concepts that you need to understand about that brand. Now, let's take, for example, in building a brand, one of the things you want to aim for is brand relevance. Now, how do you get to that to have brand? How do you get it to that point to have brand relevance? It means that you have to do market research. And market research, first of all, will help you to understand who is your target market. By understanding your target market, you're able now to understand what are their needs, their wants, their expectations. And remember, in building a brand and building a business is not necessarily for your ego, it's not necessarily for your emotion. You're building a business and building a brand to satisfy people's needs, wants, and expectations. So if you're going to do it in the right way, it is necessary to take the time to do the research. Once you do the research, it means that you are now establishing relevance. The next important concept for us to talk about is brand differentiating, brand differentiation factor. In building that business and building that brand, you want to ask yourself, how can I differentiate? And yes, there are a number of ways in which you can differentiate your business and your brand. From our standpoint, and those things are documented in my book, Impact Marketing and Branding, we talk about that. There are four strategic touch points that one needs to consider when you're building a brand. For example, you should be asking yourself, yes, how are you going to impact your target market? And this is what most businesses look at, how you're going to impact your target market. But there are other factors that are equally important for you to ask, and that is how to impact the workforce. Some justification why you want to impact your workforce, because when you have absenteeism and staff turnover, you have to go through the selection, the placement, selection, recruitment, acclimatization process, and all of this can take away from the value that you want to give to the customer. So those are two important touch points that we've looked at so far. You want to ask yourself how to impact the public also. Many entrepreneurs might want to say the general public are not my consumers. You may be right with that, but members of the public may be highly influential people that can endorse and help to move your brand forward. So those are important things to look at. Another important touch point, the fourth important touch point, is where we talk about how to impact the business cash flow. Now, traditionally, what we see many businesses do, you build a business, you build a brand, and you depend on the primary income source of that business. For us, we have incorporated new innovative approaches that helps the entrepreneur to identify new important touch points to beef up the business cash flow. With time, we will go into all of that. We will not go into that now. Now, along with this, we want to talk about once you would have built, clearly established the brand relevance, clearly established how you're going to be different from everyone else in the market, you're going to leverage your differentiation factor as your value offer. That's one approach that you can use. So in building a brand, you must have a value offer. And, and fourth, you must be accessible. In terms of accessibility, there are multiple platforms that you can consider, you can leverage in terms of being visible. And coming up in the next slides, we will look at that. Now, early on, I spoke about market research, and I just want to reemphasize this point as we look at how we really get about building a strong brand. If you look at the screen, you will see at the top of that screen, I'm re-emphasizing the importance of market research. Now, research is not here as a cosmetic part of the process. It's here because it's deliberate, it's intentional, and doing market research is absolutely necessary when you're building that brand. Why? It helps you to be market oriented. Why is it necessary to be market oriented? Market orientation leads to market sensitivity. All right, so you are market oriented, you are market sensitive. Now, in building the brand, remember I said early on, it's not necessarily about you and your emotion. It's about you taking the time to understand your target market, and it's you building a value proposition that lives up to that target market needs, wants, and expectation, and possibly goes beyond their expectation. To do this effectively, it means that you're taking the time in the research to understand lifestyle, culture, social class, to understand needs, wants, and expectations, to understand dreams, hopes, and aspirations, and you build the value proposition to be able to satisfy those needs, wants, and expectations. That brings you to the bottom where we're talking about product design and product innovation. Very often we see many persons start a business, start the innovation process without clearly identifying who is your target market, what are their needs and wants and expectation. And the product design and product innovation process, it is something that should be influenced by those needs, wants, and expectations. In this case, you are not only identifying your target market, you're identifying the target market size. With that, you understand if it's going to be viable to get into the market space. You're understanding where your demographics are strategically positioned, and you're identifying how to access those markets. So the market research would inform all of this, which will really inform you if you should build that brand out in the first place. And that's why for us, we believe in research-based branding. The next concept is what we talk about is the brand differentiating factor. I would have already emphasized that. There are four important touch points when you're building the brand and you want that brand to make the strongest of impact. Some of the touch points we talk about is how to impact your target market, how to impact your team dynamics, how to impact the public, and how to impact the business cash flow. In building a brand is not, you're not just building a brand, the brand represents the entire ecosystem of that business. And that's something that you need to think about. If finance is not able to honor its financial obligation, it affects the brand. If public relation is not able to honor this obligation, it affects the brand image. If marketing and branding is not able to affect the brand, is going to affect the image. So the entire business ecosystem is a collective representation of the brand. Now, once you would have gone through this, the next thing is the brand offer. And it brings you back to market research. Now, the big question that many persons may ask often, branding versus marketing or visibility. It should not be versus. Branding is the proprietary work that you have to do, where you're asking yourself how you want the public to perceive you. Now, the brand can be perceived in three categories: as a premium brand, as a supplementary brand, or as a complementary brand. So when we talk about branding, the important questions that you should be asking yourself is, how do you want to be perceived by your specific target market and by the public? And those three categories you have to seriously think about. Now, based on if you're going for the premium, if you're building a premium brand, your value proposition, the VP, has to be stronger. Now, the point I was about to make is that in building the brand, it's necessary also to distinguish the difference between building the brand and marketing. Marketing is another activity altogether. The branding is what the marketing theme carry to the public domain. And the objective of marketing is to ensure that you get in visibility, but visibility is not reach. These are things that we need to take note of. Reach is not impact. And once you get to that point of making impact, you want to ensure that you're converting. If you don't convert, you don't cash flow. If you're not cash flowing, you don't have a business. Perhaps you have a hobby. Now, once you get to that point of cash flow, conversion and cash flow, that's not the beginning and the end. You want to come to that point where you are consistently invested in building confidence in your brand, you're building trust in your brand, and you're coming all the way to that point where you have credibility in the brand. This takes a process. It takes time to be able to do this. And of course, there are ways in which you may be able to fast track the process. But these are just some important points that I want to make with the limited time that we have so far to present on this topic. Again, in conclusion, there's a next slide which would show this program comes to you with a kind has been prepared by Global Capital and 10X Branding and Marketing LLC out of New York. The information is taken from two books, which is Impact Marketing and Branding and 10X Branding and Marketing Blueprint. So in the event that you want to get access to these books, you can possibly tap on the link, which is globalcapital.us.com. And that once you go to book publishing, you should be able to get access to those books. Thanks again, Roche. All to you.
Gary. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate your presentation. Took a few notes here, things that stood out. Taking the time to understand your target market is absolutely critical. Building your value proposition, and I noticed the emphasis on focusing on your customers, your clients, your prospects' needs, wants, and expectations. Thank you for your presentation, Gary. Now, before I introduce our next speaker, I also want to remind everyone that we will have a Q&A session after all the panelists have shared their knowledge with us. And so if you've got any questions, go ahead and drop them in to the comments wherever you're seeing this. If you're watching this on Facebook, just go ahead in the comments and drop it in there. If you are watching this because we shared the link on WhatsApp, please go ahead and drop those questions for us so we can tackle them at the end of our session. Okay, and so we are moving on. Our next panelist is no other than Miss Evie Kanai Gurcharan. She's a serial entrepreneur, distinguished leader, the CEO and business analyst at Gurcharan Investments, and she leads the portfolio for digital brand and content development strategy and digital public relations on various technology, public health, and entrepreneurship projects. She has a keen interest in empowering entrepreneurs through e-commerce and in leveraging technology for growth and global market access. She is a multi-award winning social and innovation conscious woman. She uses her platform to mentor and to encourage other young women in career goals and growth through various programs, many of which she created. An example of that is a global not-for-profit called Girls in Tech, and she runs the Guyana chapter. And in addition to her voluntary work, Evie is the current past vice chairman of the Small Business Board under the Small Business Bureau. She also serves as the newest chair of this committee, the GCCI's Entrepreneurship and Small Business Committee, and is the co-founder of the nonprofit Association of Women Entrepreneurs. Evie, over to you. Just give us a moment, folks, while we figure out the technical stuff. We are coming to you live, and this is in a virtual digital setting. Anything could go wrong, but we're going to sort it out and get right back to you. Oh, there you go. Welcome. I can hear you now. You know what they say, right? It's not really a presentation unless there's a glitch, right?
Oh,
now
yes.
It's a full-blown presentation.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I am so excited to be talking to you about my favorite topic, branding, and sharing with you tips for developing your brand identity on this National Small Business Week. So let's jump right into it. And I want to talk to you, first of all, about a typical customer life cycle. Now, when a customer decides that they want to buy something, the first thing they go through is that point of discovery. And we just had an expo, and that was a great point of discovery for many people in our small businesses. And then we have other points of discovery, such as Google searches. We have Facebook Marketplace, for example. And when our customers discover that they want this product and there is someone that can provide it, they explore. They explore what their options are, they make comparisons, and then finally they evaluate so that they can finalize a decision on the product or service that they want to purchase. Now, these steps are so key in your branding journey, because the first thing you need to be is discovered, right? And then you have to have that amount of information and that amount of competence in your brand that people can explore you, they can draw that comparison, and of course, be confident that they're making a good decision with their money. Then there is the customer retention. So your brand has to deliver and deliver on point so that you're keeping those customers. And even further to that, we want people shouting your name from the rooftops and saying, hey, I use this product, I use this service, and their brand is on point. They do everything they say they will do, and they really deliver. And I'm really proud to champion that brand and use it. So when we think about branding, what you really want to consider is how can you be in the mind and the hearts, I like to say, of your target audience. Now, we heard Gary say that sometimes small business owners say everybody is my customer. And the truth of the matter is everybody cannot be your customer, because you may have a product and service that some people cannot afford. You might have a product or service that just does not fit the lifestyle of someone. And all these things we have to consider when we're thinking about who is my audience. And your brand has to align with the needs of the people that you're selling for. You also want to consider how people perceive your brand, what you want them to feel versus what they do feel. Now, I do know a couple of brands in Guyana that when people hear your name, not only Guyana, anywhere in the world, they hear the name, it's, a long suck teeth or, a kind of squinty eye. And that's not what we want people to be feeling about our brand. But I know that maybe at one point or the other, you've had that experience. How do you create brand association? Now, brand association simply is when somebody thinks about an item or a service, they automatically think about your brand as providing that product or service. And finally, how do you shape that brand preference. When we have so many competitors and we have similar products on the market, how do we get people to say, hey, I'm going to go to this brand because this brand does it best? All of this, of course, is through building your brand identity. I'm going to throw a little bit of technical marketing knowledge here at you and talk about a brand archetype or personality type. And the thing with small business owners is that oftentimes your personality is your brand personality, because you're the one out there selling, you're the one out there repping your brand. And really ask yourself, who am I? Am I internally a hero? Do I want to save people's lives with my products and service? Am I a caregiver? Do I want people to feel cared for, loved? Do I want them to feel like I'm creating magic? And when you know what you want your brand to stand for, or when you know your personality type and how you want to express that through your brand, there are a few examples of marketing that you can look at and research these brands to understand where they found success and how you too can build your brand along the line of being that type of archetype or personality. All right, so brand consistency is essential. So we just saw the archetype, and I'm sure that from childhood you've probably seen these logos, and I'm sure that from childhood you probably know some of the taglines that are associated with those brands, and that comes because they have been consistent in their branding over the decades. And even when there's been a pivot or change in branding, they have communicated it well. And they've done this with consistent imagery, quality, consistent delivery, and consistent follow through. Meaning the great service that you got today is the great service you're going to get 10 years from now, the great product and everything. Another consideration for consistency is the color and texts that we use. And when we're branding, we want to think about what text really represents our brand personality. Fatter texts are more to be bold. Skinnier texts are more along the line of elegance. And then, of course, we have our color wheel where we can look at different colors, complementing colors. This particular color wheel I've put up here has dominant colors, non-dominant colors, accenting colors, all these things we want to consider when we're thinking about building our brand identity out. Another part of consistent imagery is actually the voice. How do you talk about your products and services? The tone you use. If you're doing ads or videos, the tempo, the jargon or conciseness. And I also want you to consider appropriateness. A lot of times we say sex sells, and we just jump on the bandwagon of using images or using words associated with whether it's a female sex or the male sex, and it becomes inappropriate for our brand. So we really want to think about that. And then colloquialisms, because we live in the Caribbean, we have a lot of words and a lot of phrases that are unique to us. But then when we consider our target market, they may not understand what we're trying to convey. So it's really important for us to think about our voice when we're doing our branding. Consistent imagery is important in terms of the look and feel of your images. This again goes back to what you want your customers to feel. For me, in choosing these images, I wanted them to feel warm, cozy. I want them to feel invited, that when they eat this, they could relax. And it really depends on what you want to represent through your brand. All right, so consistent quality. Now, you might say that, no, this is part of the product or sales product, but no, you want to create protocols and processes because you want to be able to say, this is how you can access my brand. And when you create protocols and processes also, you help your employees to interact with your brand better and express your brand better. You help your even your stakeholders and your customers to understand your brand and understand how to interact with it. You also want to tune up your supply chain. And it's not something you usually think about in branding. But if you're unable to get a particular product that makes your service work, or a particular product that people rely on your brand for, then they may feel that your brand is failing them when you don't have that product or cannot offer that service. Keep your finger on customer feedback. I cannot express enough how important this is. Customer feedback is free market research, and many times your customers will have insights that no one else has, and they're giving it to you and giving you a chance to improve your brand. So, I wanted to quickly talk to you also about the customer touchpoint mapping. And this is to understand where your customers are most exposed to your brand. So where do they start? How do they start getting to you? If you're in the mall or you're down Regent Street or you're online, how are they finding you? What is the first point of contact? How do they message you? Do they message you on WhatsApp? Do they have to email you? If you have a website, do they go there? All of this is a process that helping people interact and build credibility and build reliability of your brand. The next thing you want to do is kind of map out your customer experience. Identify those touch points. If you want people to call you first, if you want them to WhatsApp you first, then one great thing is to have a WhatsApp message if you're using business WhatsApp to kind of reply to them. And then conduct research on your customers. Determine the points of friction so that you can fix them and fix them quickly. So improve by resolving the problem identified, letting them know that your brand is committed to ensuring an experience that they can rely on, a positive experience that they can rely on. And then, of course, you want to do some maintenance. Review the map, review the journey, see what's changed for your customers, see what's changed for the market, see what's changed in your process, what has been affected. And then we start that process all over again. Consistent follow through and relationship management. And there are a lot of tools that you can use for this. I encourage each and every one of you to capture your customers' information, their name, their telephone number, email address. If you have programs that involve their birthday, I would even encourage you to capture their birthdays, because managing a relationship with your customer, your client, is essential to building your brand and getting back to what we talked about before. Now, we want your customer and your clients screaming your praises from the rooftop, always relying, always referring you, always saying what an amazing job you've done. And that is how we grow our business through our brand and keep our brand visible. All right. Thank you very much. We are here to answer any questions, like Roche would have mentioned. And I really want to encourage you to think about your brand archetype again. What do you want to express? How do you want to express who you are through your brand? And what do you want people to know about your brand? And then we can take it from there. So thank you very much. And that is my presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Evie, for your presentation. We really appreciate that. A few things stood out to me. How can you be in the hearts and minds of your customer? How can you be in the hearts and minds of your customer? I think that's one that I'm going to think about even after this webinar is over. And I hope for all those who are attending that it's something you're really going to be thinking about as well. And that distinction, I believe, was important. You know, how do people perceive you as opposed to how do you want them to see you? You know, how do you want to express yourself? And then, of course, keeping a finger on the pulse, keeping a finger on customer feedback. That's an important way for you to receive intel and then to course correct where necessary. So thanks again, Evie. And we're now going to queue up our next panelist. He is no other than Mr. Riyad Boyce. He's been part of the marketing and advertising industry for more than 20 years. His experience spans all areas of brand management, from startups to higher level corporate enterprise sized businesses. He continues to demonstrate his ability and knowledge through practical applications, and his results are seen in the businesses that he leads and the businesses that he supports. Again, he's the CEO of Sonic Business Services and Branded, and the co-founder of Youth Basketball Guyana. Mr. Riyad, over to you.
Thank you very much, Roche, and good night to everyone. Thank you for taking the time out to be with us here on this very important webinar and to support Small Business Week. My task here tonight is very simple. It's to answer the question, why should you invest in branding collateral? EV? Investing in branding collateral. Next slide, please. Okay, what is branding collateral? Any material used to communicate a company's brand message, product, or service. Today I will speak on some of the simpler and low-cost branding opportunities for small business. And mainly they come under these categories of printed material, displays, internal and external from your business, static ads, and specialty items. Those are novelty and gift items. These are some simple tools. Every business must have a business. You should have a business card. It should be very simple. All the necessary information that you need to share with your clients or potential clients should be on there. Even though we can offer, or you can access QR code and add it to your business card. It's a nice new feature that allows you, someone to scan your card and it goes straight to your contact information. Your business email is very important. It affords you, it should be, first of all, one that is synonymous with your business name and not something outlandish. Very simple, clean. And in your email, you also should add your logo and in your email signature. So it's all part of building your brand. All your stationery in your office that you use, whether it's digital or printed, your quotations, your invoices, receipts, all of those are investments in your brand. Your signage. There's an old anecdote that says a business with no sign is a sign of no business. So whatever your budget is, you should always invest in some sort of signage in your business. If you're in a street, I always recommend that you have a sign at the head of the street if it's one of those streets that are not very popular, so persons can find you to transact whatever business transactions. Again, for small businesses, printing posters and flyers and brochures, whether it's printed or digitally, it should be a must to promote your product, to give somebody something to take away, or you can email it to them if it's digital. And most fun, it's novelty items. Everyone loves to get a gift or a trinket when they visit you or when you go out to a trade show. It's a cool way to have people remember you and come back to you, because your brand is always going to be there with them as they move along. Next slide, please. Knowing your industry. Our speakers before, or my partners, spoke about this, and it's very important because each industry has different branding opportunities that one should really pay attention to, and you must take the time to know your industry. And in that we can discuss some areas that you can use in each industry. Okay, so this is a cool example. Someone I saw selling achar at our expo, and it was a good opportunity to use this example simply because not only do you should have your ingredients placed at the back of your jar, but if it's your product, then your logo and your brand should be placed very clearly at the front, and very visible with the colors suitable for your product. And this goes for any item. If you're in the construction industry, now PPE has become a very important part of our daily lives. Why not brand it? Brand your vest, brand your helmet, brand your car. Even if it's your personal car, you can use a magnetic sticker, which allows you to use it during your work, and then at the end of the day, you can remove it. And those are very cool, very inexpensive investments that you can make in your operations. Stickers and labels, again, also are very, very low cost investments. If whatever products you're selling, you can add a sticker to it. You can invest in gift bags, branded gift bags. These last much longer than the transaction. So when you're finished, your person's finished using your product, your bag will still exist. Stickers also do well on your window. You can use it for sale. sales special offers. Most of the stickers now that are available are weatherproof. They can withstand any weather that you may throw at it, rain and so on. So they're very good investments, especially in a small quantity. You can invest in those. Novelty items there are thousands of items available out there. So it's important to take the time to understand the industry that you're in and to make sure that the items that you choose are suitable for your company and for the uses it's intended. An example that we have here is notebooks. Those are good for office use. People tend to take them to meetings. Executive pens are also very good because people tend to always want to have a cool pen. Up on the right side of my screen, you'll see what looks like a business card, but that's actually a USB drive. This is a cool feature because you can give it out as a business card, and it's a flash drive that affords you the ability to load your company information on it, or your brochure, or a video of what you're doing. These are simple and fairly inexpensive items that you can invest in for your company and to promote your brand. Signage. I've always recommended every business owner to have a pull-up banner. It's the coolest thing to have. You can use it in your business, and if you're going on the road to a trade show, next year's Small Business Expo, you can have that and display additional information about your products and services. You can travel with it. They're very light. And when we speak about signage as well, it's very important and as Evie mentioned, for your customer service and your customer experience. When someone comes to your business, your signage helps to direct them to where you are, what safety measures they need to take, where what is located, whether it's in a store or in your business. And so signage is very important investment as part of your overall brand and customer experience. This is a project that we did recently. We basically rebranded the front of a store using China letters. This is very simple. Good use of colors. It upgraded more or less, and the impact of what we did was very evident here. So when you're choosing your logo and your brand, it's very important to keep in mind what the impact that Gary spoke about and Evie spoke about. It's very important. Uniforms, it's always very important if you can get your team uniformed as best as possible. Budget sometimes is an issue. So there are many different options. There's screen printing, there's heat transfers, there's embroidery. It's very important as well to choose quality items because you want to get maximum use out of your gear that you choose, whether it's shirts, polo shirts, t-shirts. If you're going on the fields, you get hats. But it's always very important to have your team very uniform with your logo cleanly placed and printed on it. We'll show you some examples of logos that are simple and effective, that can be embroidered. Important to note that every item has its own limitations and what it will allow you to put on it. So again, when designing your logo, and I'll touch on this a little later, it's very important to always be conscious that you're using your logo on many of these items that we spoke about and the limitations that come with these items. General reminder, for better impact, always important to use legible fonts. These fonts should be able to be used on any item, any item that you choose that's suitable. If you spoke about the psychology of colors, it's very important. What's the impact that you want the color to say about you and your business? And of course, having a clean logo is always very helpful when thinking about your brand. Tagline, it's always cool to have a catchy tagline as well that complements your brand. And we'll look at some logos now that have used some of these elements in their brand and their logo. Looking at GT&T, it's very simple. Use of colors. Social Rank is also has a great logo, very simple, complementary colors as well. We all know Coca-Cola, not very complex. And the one I love the most is Toyota. It's an 80-year-old brand. They've evolved now to where they don't even use their name. We all are familiar with this logo. And I think that's where we all want to be someday as a small business, where our brand and its impact and its effectiveness of it is there, like a Toyota. Key takeaways today is choosing the right brand for your business. It's every business has a different brand, different needs, and some things can be fun as well. Natural and your digital platform designs and logos are consistent to get the most and the highest impact from it. And most importantly, remember, you can really define your brand identity and your logo at any time. Just sit and think about where you want to go, and you can really design it. Thank you. Roche, back to you.
Thank you, Riyadh, for a great presentation. A business with no sign is a sign of no business. I'm going to remember that one moving forward. Thanks for sharing that, and for all the great, real world examples. I was pleasantly surprised when I saw Social Rank, when I saw their logo on there as well, or I should say when I saw our logo on there. Thanks for sharing that. And a couple of key things stood out to me as well. Very tactical, but very important tips, I believe. A simple thing as using your business card, but putting a QR code on there. So you're adding that component, that digital component that can take people to have another experience online after you've engaged them in a real world setting. The point about the email, that really stood out as well. I don't want to call names or throw anybody under the bus, but I will say I have seen some, perhaps not the most professional emails. And so making sure that's consistent and professional is key. And then that point you made about consistency really hit home. I've seen brands that look a certain way in the commercial on TV, and then in the newspaper it looks a little different, and then when you go to social media it looks a little different. Maybe the shades or the colors are a little different, or the fonts are not exactly consistent. And so I think that point on brand consistency really hits home. Thank you so much for your presentation. Again, a reminder for everyone who's got questions, feel free to drop those in the comments, and we will tackle those at the end of our session. And so our final panelist, I have, it's the absolute pleasure to introduce him. It says in his bio, at 57 years old, I'll say at 57 years young, Dennis Chabral has over 35 years in technical, non-technical, and broadcast journalism and radio production on air. He's worked for several international regional organizations. Interestingly enough, that includes the BBC. He has a degree in communications from the University of Guyana and is a former lecturer in communication for marketing management at UG. He's a pioneer of online journalism in Guyana. He is the executive chairman of News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM. And Dennis truly believes he's still very much a journalist, even as his responsibilities evolve. Dennis, it's a pleasure to have you on here. Over to you.
Thank you, Roche, and a very good evening to colleague panelists as well as our listeners and viewers online. If Eve can probably shoot the presentation up, that'll be good. Otherwise, I'll be able to bring it up. So this presentation has been done by us at News Talk Radio Guyana, and the major part of the presentation was done by my co-shareholder, Surendra Dan Paul, who is based in the United States. So he has also brought to bear his expertise in this proposal. So we are all going to take this opportunity as well to wish you, all of you in Guyana who are listening and watching, a happy National Small Business Week. Happy, productive, and prosperous, I must say. Next slide. Well, the question really is asked in an era of social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, the viability of traditional media. Well, one of the things that strikes us right off the top of our heads is traditional media is local. Whereas you want to capitalize, you want to pay X amount for a number of posts and boosts on Facebook or any other social media. Traditional media is local, and it's also credible. When we say credible, we know that in this era there are very many people who call themselves media houses, and they just by the click of a finger start up a Facebook page and decide that they're a media house, and they post anything or everything that they think ought to be posted, whether true or not. And they believe that they have the majority or the maximum number of posts or views or likes that they command an audience. But that has other implications such as credibility. Uh, do you, as a business, want to be associated by way of advertising in such a medium that might be considered to be lacking credibility or engage in peddling misinformation and disinformation? Do you want to align yourself with such a business only for the sake of people seeing your business more and more on such a platform? This can cause an indirect labeling of your business in the eyes of John Public, and we should never ever underestimate John Public. Whether it's the man at the corner of Camp and Charlotte Streets trying to win the next horse race, or the lady who's selling sweets at the corner, super micro business, they all have their perceptions about what is considered credible or factual. So one has to be very careful about when one aligns one advertisement with media that are considered to be social but at the same time not credible. So we believe that there's a big place there for traditional media, especially those that abide by very many, if not all, of the core principles of journalism, content production, whether it be magazine production, or special programs or other types of material, but the ones that abide by the rules of the game, largely speaking. Target audience and reach. Now, in the context of Guyana, we here do not have uh, measurement entities like Arbitron and so on that will actually go out there and do lots of surveys and have all the technologies to do this. So, on the one hand, you can measure the reach of a Facebook post by what you see in the back end. On the other hand, uh, there are also the traditional media that also have a place in the market segmentation that are still considered credible and also very good for business. When it comes to traditional media, we can do so much more in terms of give you the bang for your buck. Yes, you have to pay 10, 15, 20, $50 for a post, for the boost of a post to an external entity, Facebook, not owned by Guyanese, nowhere near local content. But we can work out deals, whether it be News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM or any other local media, traditional media, can work out a better package and give you free opportunities, literally free. It's not the case of you just using the word free, but there are opportunities there that one can devise as part of the strategic marketing approach to ensure that your business, your product, your service, your message is important. It's not only about your advertising, but it's about your message. Whether it's a press release or it's an interview or it is a discussion, all of these things are part of your messaging. And in traditional media, those are offerings that can be built into a package. Traditional media is local, as I said, so why pay to US companies like Google and Facebook, importing advertising and all of that? Paying traditional media companies equals paying Guyanese staff. We talk so much about the retention of our skills, of our qualified persons, of our human resource capital, how to build our local content, how to gear it up for the evolving economy of Guyana. But can we necessarily do that when businesses do not see the need to advertise with traditional media, but think that it is all well and good to see their posts on Facebook, and they measure that by your comments, your likes, your shares, and perhaps their messages may not necessarily get to where they want. I mean, I can call right off the top of my head a number of businesses that have Facebook pages, big companies. But when you look at the traffic, you say, wow, they're really trying to advertise a product or a service because the traction is so low. But if you can work with the traditional media, I'm sure you can get a better bang for your buck as far as the packaging is concerned. So, yes, traditional media can also take advantage of existing social media platforms, but because we bring to the table that credibility, as I referred to earlier, that is where the value added comes in. So it's not only about a Facebook page; it's about value added. It's like taking a fell tree and making a very lovely piece of furniture and exporting it for much more money. That's what traditional media are all about. Credibility, as I indicated to you earlier, this comes with the verification of sources, verification of material. The material is edited. We're not saying it's going to be like propaganda, but it's edited material to ensure that it is accurate, that it is fair, that it is balanced, and that all the sourcing is verified. It's no point one putting out a message out there, but it is not verified information and it turns out to be untrue, whether it be about a specific business or generally. We can all say any and everything on Facebook and believe that we're part of an established media house. But when it comes down to being fake news, then that damages a brand that becomes associated with such an entity through a particular type of medium. This brings me back now to the point of misinformation and disinformation. There's a global crackdown on the whole business of misinformation and disinformation through fora such as UNESCO, the Global Forum for Media Development, the Association of Caribbean Media Workers, the Guyana Press Association, and a number of other entities are all trying to crack down on misinformation and disinformation because it is something that can be harmful to media practitioners, to business enterprises, to governments, to states, to the private sector, to civil society. All of these entities and individuals can become victims of misinformation and disinformation. Do we want to be really viewed as freedom fighters or do we want to be viewed as hooligans? Peddling all sorts of material that are not necessarily based on fact. Uh, we have to be wary of those semi or entities that consider themselves to be new media, social media. They say they have thousands of followers or likes. But what about the truth? Is it you want to be aligned with alternative facts or you want to become aligned with an entity that keeps peddling something over and over? Then it is perceived to be true when indeed it is not. So in Guyana growing up, we hear so much about what we call the Susu effect. In Susu, everybody pass on a word about something, then that becomes distorted. In essence, that is what happens a lot on social media, which very many businesses think that they're getting traction on. But you have to look at the overall profiling of your business and who or what it is associated with. Also, social media gives people the opportunity to say all sorts of things, some factual, some not, a lot of it adverse about your product, about your service, because people think that they have a right to speak. Yes, freedom of expression is enshrined in the Constitution. It is one of our fundamental rights, but like any other right, it is not there to be abused. Target audience and reach, well, I can tell you, if you're looking to spend money on a foreign entity as opposed to local content, you have to look at how you're measuring that. In the case of in the case of News Talk Radio Guyana, we do have a social media uh, presence. We have a Facebook page with about 100,000 followers, maximum 20,000 views, and so on. So social media drives traffic to traditional media. So if we say listen to News Talk Radio, whether it's on our live stream or whether it is on social media or on our terrestrial transmitter, we're using that as a means to get to a northern market segment. It is not the be all and end all. Some people seem to be confined alone to social media. Ads and boosts, well, $5 a budget per day. You get about 300 impressions on social versus 50,000 plus. A cost per click versus zero in traditional media. You decide whether you want to really take advantage of credibility as opposed to rumor mongering. Any questions, clarifications? We are here to lend a helping hand for you to get a better grasp of what we're saying conceptually. You can reach out to myself and dishabral@gmail.com or face or WhatsApp or phone 5926929400. And Surendra Dan Paul, also a team member behind News Talk Radio. He's at surendra.danpaul@gmail.com. And his WhatsApp or telephone is plus 347 437 4368. Looking forward to your questions and clarifications. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Hello, hello. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dennis, for your wonderful presentation. I also wear the cap as director of a digital PR agency. And so as you were going through your presentation, I was wondering whether I needed to get the boxing gloves out so we could do a traditional versus social media. But the truth is, I'm aligned with a lot of what you shared. I think the point you raised about social versus credible is absolutely key. In a world of social media, what about credibility? What about misinformation? What about disinformation? And you often see this on social. You see individuals who seek the credibility of getting their press release out, of getting a credible news organization to run that story. And then they take that story and post it on social media and then run that as an ad. And the reason they do that is because there's credibility in having that credible traditional media house run that story. And I think the point that you made as well about local content, that's a critical point. The local content relates to media and advertising as well. And to your point about the Susu effect, this is true. And this is something, I try to bring awareness around, that if you're not careful with how you consume content online, you could create what is referred to as that echo chamber based on the algorithms. And, so you want to be responsible with how you consume content online as well. All in all, thank you very much, Dennis, for a great presentation. Thanks for offering the counterbalance in a world of social and digital media. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this segment, and we're going to warm up with some questions for our panelists. Evie, if I can ask you to bring everybody on so we can see everyone. Perfect, brilliant. And before we dive into the first question, I do want to take a quick moment to say a big thank you to our partners. This is a GCCI initiative, but we are strongly supported by GTT Business Solutions and by Go Invest. And this would not be possible, the expo, the launch, the networking, this would not be possible without our incredible sponsors, the Small Business Bureau, CT Williams Technologies, Triple D's Inc., BK Supermix, Vitality Accounting and Consultancy, and Sawa Investments. And so a special moment to recognize our partners and our sponsors. Panelists, are you ready for question number one? It's coming in from William from Westcorp or Westcore, not sure how we say that, group of companies. And here's the question. How can small businesses hop on big data-driven technologies and networks to benefit from its wide platform for branding, marketing, supplying, and providing access to their services? Who would like to tackle this on our panel? How can small businesses hop on big data-driven technologies and networks to benefit from its branding, its marketing, its supplying, and providing access?
Are you hearing me?
You're coming through loud and clear, Dennis.
Yes, I'm hearing an echo, so I'm a bit distracted. Okay. Yes. I would say that as a traditional and social media based entity, I think there is scope there for entities such as the one that the question in relation to the question. Sorry, for media houses generally to provide that opportunity, that scope for these small businesses to market their products and services, not necessarily on a fixed fee structure basis, where you use what we call in broadcasting, and to some extent, I believe, in the field of social media, the rate card. We're not looking at the real value of advertisements. We're looking at what can be done to align those businesses with what can be offered either free or at a minimal cost, so that those small businesses will get an opportunity to grow in the public's eye. And once that is done, eventually we can see a situation where they see the value of having their profiles out there, uh, through standard media such as ours, such as traditional media, and through entities like those that you're involved in. Because the more they get bigger, is the more they would like to have greater exposure. And that is when you will see them actually beginning to spend big on promoting themselves even further, even beyond the shores of Guyana.
So, Roche, if I can just weigh in from a tech perspective. So, when we hear the words big data, we really have to bring it into context for small businesses. A big data is actually just the volume of data that we are able to receive and process on a daily basis. For small businesses, right now you might be experiencing data through your social media channels in terms of your insights, and if you're using customer relation management softwares, even content management systems, you'll notice daily that you can either record your transactions, capture customer data, and these kind of things. So big data driven technologies are just doing that on a wider scale and a larger scale. I wouldn't worry too much if you're a small business, a micro business, about what that means for you unless you're specifically in tech, unless you're specifically looking at e-commerce and these other types of technologies to drive your business. So in terms of branding, what this means is that you have the opportunity in your sales system, if you're using something that is capturing your sales daily, to see your trends and capitalize on that. What are your clients buying daily? Which product is doing better than the other product? Should I be stocking this more? And that's what I was talking about when I said branding in terms of fine tuning your supply chain. Because when you're able to put your finger on that customer feedback, on that data, you're able to um, use that information, because you can very well have a lot of data but not have the information that's relevant to your business and helps with your branding. So really think about putting that infrastructure in place, and by infrastructure I mean your points of capture for that data, how you utilize or process that data, and then how you visualize that data so that you can make decisions that are good for your business, make decisions that help your branding be more applicable to your target audience. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Dennis and Evie. If we don't have any comments on this from the panel, from the other panelists, we will move on to question number 2.
Hi, Roche. I wish I meant.
Yeah, go for it.
I want to give a simple answer. Yeah, I want to give a simple answer. We know that smaller businesses are at a disadvantage, but I do believe that there's a way around it. And one of the things that I want to advocate here is that small businesses can invest time, talent, and resources to enhance the value proposition. And there's something in business that we call vertical or horizontal amalgamation or collaborating. Small business can collaborate with bigger businesses, and through those collaboration, once they would have enhanced their value proposition, it gives them a chance to leverage the big data and to enhance their visibility. In the developed world, it happens a whole lot, and it helps them to raise their competitive advantage.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Appreciate your contribution. So moving on to question number 2. This is a loaded one. Could you detail an effective launch strategy for a new product or service? And here's the follow-up to that. Also, how does one go about developing a tourism product or experience? The question is coming from Ashman John from Glamp Camp. Over to you, panelists. Anybody want to take a stab at it?
Well, as you say, it's a loaded question, but I do believe that for us, building the brand strategy, first of all, begins with you really taking the time to understand your target market. There's no strategy if you don't understand who you're targeting. So you want to take that time to understand your target market. And understanding your target market can be very deep because you want to understand what are their needs, what are their wants. And I think Evie spoke a lot to some of that, to some of that. But as you understand your target market, and as Dennis would have talked about, media effectiveness, is how you can leverage the intelligence of the target market, the intelligence of the media outlet, and the media effectiveness, and to incorporate all of that into the strategy. Because let's take, for example, you take the time, you study the market, you understand your target market, their needs, wants, and their expectations. Now, the next step, you want to get visibility, you want to get reach, you want to get impact, you want to get conversion. To achieve all of that, you have to leverage several media platforms. You have social media, you have mass media, which Dennis would have represented. Today, depending on where you are in the world, you have the metaverse, and you also have independent communication platforms. So it is necessary as you build out your strategy to understand the effectiveness of all of these media platforms, and because your ideal customers are spread among these platforms. So the key is understanding the effectiveness of those media outlets and leveraging that intelligence to achieve the marketing objectives.
Okay, thank you. Evie, Riyadh, do you want to take a stab at this?
Sure. Definitely start with your goals and your objectives. When you're thinking about a strategy, what is the end game? What is it that you want to achieve? And work your way backwards from that. Is it that you want to express information, gain sales? Is it that you just would like to raise the visibility of your product or service? It really depends on what those objectives are, and then creating a strategy that fits that goal. How does one develop a tourism product or experience? I would say read case studies, look at very much what's out there, and gain inspiration. I'm not saying copy, but there must be some amount of inspiration, some amount of intel, a lot of examples of how your business can be as successful as another product or service that's similar to you, and how you can implement it based on your own brand identity, and how you can implement those best practices, and just what's worked. So definitely research, read, know what's worked, also understand the market that you're in. It's really really important that when you're researching and you're considering what's worked in other markets, that you consider your market and why it might not work for you. Our tourism industry has several difficulties: the high cost of transportation into different places, the regulations, just so many things that can affect your brand. So you really have to understand those two things, that there's a lot of resources and information out there that you can get inspiration from, but then you also have to understand your market and get involved with the GTA, get involved with TAG, get involved with the Ministry of Tourism. There's a lot of resources, a lot of help, and a lot of direction to be gained from those organizations.
Okay, great. Thank you, Evie. And just some general feedback I throw in there as well is begin with the end in mind. What ultimately, what are you trying to achieve, and then how could you, as Evie said, kind of reverse engineer the process, on how you get there. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes when you do something that's so unique and super novel, maybe there's a reason no one else in the market's doing that. Maybe it doesn't actually work. Maybe there isn't a niche for that. Now, I'm not saying that you make that judgment call immediately, but you do your research and you figure out whether there is demand for what it is that you have to offer. Create what we call an MVP, not most valuable player, but an MVP, your minimum viable product, right? What's the simple version of what you have to offer without all the fancy bells and whistles? You put that out into the market and you see if there's an appetite for it. Are you getting some bites? Are people showing interest? Are you getting phone calls? That signals to you, hey, I've got something here. And then you can build that as you go. All right. So moving on to question number 3. This comes from Tracy, Handcrafting with Tracy Ann. The only means of visibility and branding I've done is Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, but I'm still not as visible as I could be. Question: how can I use these tools more effectively? You know the saying, right, guys? If you don't volunteer, you get voluntold, right?
Roche.
Well, being on the social channels is great, but it all comes down to your content strategy. It's not just about throwing up a picture of what you've done or a picture of you being in a certain place or a picture of your store. You really have to create first the imagery, like we talked about. You have to think about your copy, and you also need to think about how you're delivering it. So videos are like insane on social media right now. People much prefer to look at videos. Growing your community is another way to go. So one way you can grow your community of people that follow you is actually joining groups where you're displaying what you're doing, and you find that people that like what you do will be also in those groups, and you can gain exposure there because they'll share it, they'll tag it, they'll like it, and these kind of things. Don't underestimate the inviting your friends constantly to like your page, or tagging. Checking in is another way if you have a physical location to raise the visibility of what you're doing. But I really want to drive home that your content strategy, and strategy means that you have a calendar, what days you're posting, you're checking your insights to see when people are on your page, you know what time is a good time to be posting, and you're checking to see if people are interacting more with your stories, they're interacting more with your posts, are they watching your videos more. It really has to come down to strategy, and then you really have to ask yourself too, are these really the right platforms for me? Crafty people do really well on Pinterest, and it also depends on who you want to attract. So even though maybe you're doing corporate gifts, then you want to be on LinkedIn because that's where corporate Guyana is. So think about those things. Think about strategy, think about platform, and think about where is my target audience, because you can very well be on a platform that your audience is not on. So think about it and look at your insights. Really be able to read how your product is doing, how your service is doing, and adjust to where you need to be.
And I would also like to add, as far as content strategy is concerned, that people also like to hear a bit about the serious side of your business, how it started, what was it all about, what was the thought about. People want to hear your story, and if you can include that in your messaging via traditional as well as social media, I think you will get some more traction. As Evie said, you've got to determine perhaps social media may or may not be the place where you need to be for your type of business. So it all comes down to the content, to your aims and your objectives, and to the use of the media at large, not only social media, the media at large, traditional and non-traditional.
Great. And if I could, just sprinkle some final thoughts in there before we move on to the next question. And this is really reinforcing what Evie and Dennis have shared. Sometimes it's not about a platform first strategy, right? Sometimes it's about a problem first strategy or a people first strategy. So what's the problem I'm looking to solve, and who are the people that I need to solve that problem for? And then where are those people? Don't immediately assume because Facebook's this hot thing, or or Meta as we call it now, or Instagram or TikTok. Don't immediately assume that's where you should be, right? This is where your research comes into play. You've really got to think it through. There's a simple model that I share with individuals, and it's called the AEC model. A stands for awareness, E stands for engagement, and C stands for conversion. That's ultimately the sale. And so what happens most of the time is we see people who say, well, I did this thing for awareness, but I didn't get the sale. And what's happening is you're skipping a really important component of how are you weaving that person into, as Dennis talked about, your brand story. How are they connecting with you as an individual? Because especially in a place where there are multiple businesses offering pretty much the same thing, you really want to lean into what's your differentiating factor, right? What makes you stand out? What makes your product stand out? And most of the time, for micro business owners and small business owners, the thing that makes your business stand out is you. You're the only you out there. And so if you really lean into, the genesis of why you got started and the why of why you got started, and the big goal and the big dream, and you tell that story, you tell that brand story, that's going to resonate with people. And then you gain more awareness, you have them engage with you and your brand, and ultimately you'll convert if you get all these items right. Question number 4. Let's move on. Where can we find data to support choices for different types of media platforms and market segments engaging / available through those platforms without the general guesses that young people are on social media and old people watch death announcements? How do I get metrics on who saw my ad and how many people did? Forgive the chuckle, I couldn't help it. But we've got an interesting question that came in here, and I'll throw this back out to the panel.
Gary, you want to take a stab at this in a comment, or you want me to go?
All right. A good question is very loaded, however. All right. Traditionally, there is something that you call the census return. And the census return is a data collection entity. And we have it in most parts of the world. But the thing about it, I don't believe that our census return, our Bureau of Statistics, may be gathering data on specific media, the media reach, the media effectiveness, the specific demographics that the media is actually appealing to. So it has to enable the persons who are producing ads, the person who are trying to reach a specific target audience, to have that database-driven information to inform their investment decision. So locally, we don't. I do, based on my research, perhaps there might have been some update. We do not have that here, but that's one way in actually gathering that kind of information, and to be able to leverage that kind of data. In terms of well, I'm going to stop here for now. We need to have more research being done into reach effectiveness of various media houses, so as to inform those who are invested in advertising and placement to be have a more reliable database in terms of doing that. Because currently, many persons putting the ads out there, you may be investing, not necessarily understanding or measuring your KPIs. So some things to consider.
I will support Gary on this. It's the reality in which we live in. But I can say, being in advertising for many years, There are some places that you can get some data. It's limited, but particularly for the newsprint, those have specific numbers that you can get based on their Sunday distribution and their during the week. And that's as far as you probably can go if you go into some of the more the stations and outlets that are out in the rural communities, where sometimes it's only them exist in that community. You can get a measurement as well, but it's very limited.
I would like to add in this that unlike the big countries like the United States and Canada, and I'm hearing somebody echoing, so it's distracting me when I'm speaking. Can somebody mute their device? Thank you. Yes, they have specific research entities like Arbitron that go there and do periodic surveys, and I think they, in some instances, use very high tech means of gathering the data. We don't have that in this part of the world. I know that, for instance, there was an entity or is an entity in Trinidad that does some work remotely, especially for the broadcast media. What they seem to focus on is the number of airplays that an ad has on particular stations. But I would say we need to guard against that. Why? Because we have found ourselves in a very bad situation here in Guyana, where in an effort to get as much revenue as possible, what we have found is that some radio stations have reduced their rates to rock bottom, and they offer some really, really unrealistic packages in the real world. So what you have is a situation: a man may pay $500 to have an ad on the radio, but then the station will say, "Okay, if you pay me $500, then I will hear your ad 40, 50 times more." So the research company out of Trinidad is actually listening to the station and monitoring the 50 or so additional ads, and is basically trying to say, well, that is a station that has the largest number of airplay per ad. But in reality, it comes down to the diminishing of the actual rates by particular stations. And these rates, I must say, panelists and to those who are listening and watching, the rates in Guyana, I'm talking about broadcast rates here, whether it be radio or television, are extremely low compared to the average audience, the population of Guyana, especially in the coastland. When you look at it alongside what is happening in the rest of the Caribbean, there is nowhere, and I can tell you this, there's nowhere any of the major telephone companies or big companies operating here in Guyana can get an ad at the same price for a smaller population in any other part of the Caribbean. Go do your research. That's a very long answer to tell you that we don't have proper measurements, and those who are measuring externally are measuring solely on the number of airplay hours or minutes. But that is not realistic. That is not a realistic representation of what actually happens.
Thank you, everyone, for your contributions to our panelists. I'm looking at the time, and we are coming up on that 90-minute mark. So let's see how many questions we can get through before we pull the curtains down on this session this evening. So I've got a question up on the screen. This is from Adia. I hope I'm not butchering your name. Here's the question: marketing takes a major chunk of a business budget that is already competing with others in the same business. So how does a business maximize its market reach where it has others in that same business space? What strategies can be implemented that can give one an edge over its competition? Great question, and I throw it over to the panelists.
I wanted to first start by reminding the viewers and listeners that there are different types of advertising, and the four major areas that that exist is you have mass media, which then I spoke about, radio, television, newspaper. You also have social media, which is a world of its own. You have static advertising, billboards, posters, anything that you can leave up there for months, years. And then you have promotions of some sort. It could be an activation, it could be an outdoor promotion, it could be an in-store promotion. So I think one first has to take that into account, and then using some of the information that Evie and you spoke about, Gary mentioned in terms of understanding your client, understanding what you're trying to do and who you're trying to reach. That comes into play because as answering this question, sometimes if you know where the area of the clients exists, then maybe it's better you put up a billboard somewhere in front of your building or your house or on the main road, and it may cost a lot in the upfront, but then you know the one that everyone sees when they're driving past on the whichever highway that you're closest to. So I want us to understand what you want to who you want to target and what you want to achieve. But there is an important less important bit of information that we must always take into account, that over marketing is very dangerous. So one might want to put, let's say, an ad in Sunday newspaper, and some of these papers sell about 30,000, and then you have now 100 people show up at your store next morning to buy the four cell phones that you have to sell, and then your everyone starts to complain on your business, and so that is something very important to keep in mind.
I would say quickly, Roche, focus on, you have to try to bring your good or service you have to personalize it. What is it that separates your product or service from the rest of the people, and how will it directly benefit you? Would it make you feel relaxed, or is the texture of the clothing going to be good for your skin? You got to try and personalize it to the average person. Other than that, you'll be just out there fighting for another market.
Thank you. Thank you for your contributions. We've got another question on here. How much should I invest in marketing and advertising monthly to reach more customers? How much should I invest in marketing and advertising monthly to reach more customers? I like the fact that whoever asked this question, they use the word invest and not spend. So they understand that this is an investment and they do expect to receive a return on that investment. Maybe Riyadh, you can kick this off and get the conversation going.
Yeah, I mean, just what I was saying. I mean, you first have to ask yourself, do your research, and more importantly, understand the different mediums that are out there. And investing also means that you have to be able to have the product or service to deliver to this particular clients or customers that are going to come your way. But there's no fixed figure. I mean, you as a business owner have to, first of all, I think, quantify what it is you're trying to sell. And when you evaluate how many items in your store, then again, it's dangerous to have 1,000 people show up your store front, and then you can't service that. That's a slippery slope. So I think it starts with, as Gary mentioned many times before, understanding your business, who are your clients, how much, what it is that you want to sell to them, and understand how much stock you can sell and how you can handle it. Then you craft your budget around that. Then you go to the media.
I usually like to give a little bit of practical advice to some of my clients, where you create an expectation of what you want or your return on investment. And based on what you would like your return to be, then you use a percentage of that to apply to your marketing efforts. So that doesn't mean ads alone. That means how much do I put into building awareness of what I'm offering, whether you're using uniforms for the event, whether you have to use signage, whether you have to invest some in graphics, video editing. So really think about, okay, if I'm selling a product and my profit is going to be $100,000, then you need to realistically expect to invest between 15 to 20% in marketing and advertising. And like I said, that's not just ads, that's process, that's information sharing, that is sensitization, even training of your employees in the new product. So when we say marketing and we say branding, like we all speakers have said, it's more consideration on what your logo looks like and what colors you use. It's about having a process, having your stakeholders involved, having every touch point looked at, reviewed, and accommodated for. So you're always delivering the best experience when customers are interacting with your product and service.
All right. I'd like to add to it. I do believe it's a very important question, but as you attempt to answer this question, it's important that in being in business that you recognize that to achieve effectiveness in marketing and advertising, it requires uh, critical market intelligence. And this relates to you taking the time to understanding the best social media platforms that you can use, the best mass media platforms that you can use, and the best independent platforms that perhaps you can create, because independent marketing is something else that can be used. But to answer the question more directly, there's a technique that is used in business that is called commission-based sales. And here is where you build a team and you identify your target market and you send your sales team out to interface with your specific target market. And that is could be commission-based revenue. Sometimes you give them 5, 10, 15, 20% of the that whole business arrangement. So that can save you some money. Along with that, thinking a lot about how to build out independent communication mediums for yourself can also give you the leverage. What it may take is your time. And once you understand how to position that in front of your ideal customers, it can go very, very far away in reducing your cost of advertising.
I just wanna, go ahead, Dennis.
Yes, I was about to say on the informational side of things, without appearing as though it is really just an advertisement, interviews are really great options for businesses
Yeah.
to make themselves more aware and visible. It allows the business an opportunity to go into much more detail about the quality of your product or your service. um, how can it benefit people in certain situations or generally. I think the interviews through established traditional media, coming back now to the whole idea of promoting and use of local content, is where we need to focus a lot to satisfy the demands of a number of those persons who have posed questions to us this evening.
Quickly before you just to add to what I said, I've worked on projects where we had to basically use every single media and element that we've spoken about. Projects that require you to do full 360 marketing. But at the end of the day, and I'm going back to what Evie just says, the best advertising is a happy client or a happy customer. And if you don't get that right, then you definitely need to look at that aspect of it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists. It is now 8:39 p.m. And so we're going to have to, for the sake of time, to pull the curtains down there. I do want to say a big thank you for everyone who has attended this evening. I hope you took copious amounts of notes, but remember, it's not about the knowledge alone. There's the knowledge component, and then there's the implementation component. And so I hope you've thought about what's the one actionable thing that I've gotten from one or more of the panelists tonight, and what's that one thing that I'm going to implement. Feel free to go ahead and reach out to the panelists. We have a wealth of knowledge. And so once again, thank you to our incredible panelists. Thank you to everyone that is on here tonight. Thank you to our partners, GTT Business Solutions and Go Invest. And a huge thank you to our sponsors, Small Business Bureau, CT Williams Technologies, Triple D's Incorporated, BK Supermix, Vitality Accounting and Consultancy, and Sawa Investments. Everyone, have a wonderful evening. Thanks once again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, which will take place at the same time, 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. Remember, National Small Business Week, shop small for a big impact.